On our last episode, we did the part 1 of our Portuguese way, El Camino. We did the coastal route with the spiritual deviant, which we will be getting to in today's episode. I can't wait to finish up this series on our El Camino solo together with you, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. In our part 1, we started in Porto, Portugal, and we have worked our way, and we are now in the home stretch. We have the last 100 kilometers or 60 miles to go. So we're officially the pilgrims that are able to get the Compostela, have the certificate that we are a pilgrim that did that last section of one of the El Caminos. There are many, many El Caminos across Europe. This is the Portuguese way on the coast, but you can come from southern Spain. You can come from England. You can come from France, and that's actually the most popular or the busiest one. And I'll have links to all the different Caminos in the show notes. But a Camino is a wonderful experience for solo people that need to either commemorate some major life change or they just want to do some thinking on their own because you're just walking all day. And it's not a hard walk. It's a long walk, but it's not a hard walk for the most part. A great way to meet people from all over the world. And it's an affordable vacation. It's a great slow travel, great way to see Europe. With that, let's talk some more about our Portuguese way Camino. So we started in Porto. We have now walked more than a week, and we are in the last 100 kilometers. So now, because of that, in order to get the Compostela, now we have to walk at least the 100 kilometers or 60 miles. And for biking, I think it's roughly double that. So it's like 200 kilometers to do so. And instead of 1 stamp a day mandatory, we now have to have 2 to show that we actually did do it. We weren't taking a cab. Up until this, if we wanted to take a bus or a cab to skip something, that was not a problem. So when we skipped the industrial area before this, that's fine. When we skipped going through downtown Porto and took a bus to the outskirts, that's fine. But now you got to do it. So off we go. And by now, our bodies are pretty conditioned, but still, at the end of the day, you're kind of tired. My feet held up and my body I was always fine with the distance. It's the bottom of my feet. They were doing great. I was thrilled about that. But still, at the end of the day, you're glad to see your endpoint. And one day we had to call the hotel because it was a little town that didn't have any hotels. We were doing the walk. We would get to this little village. That was our stopping point for the day where there's a monastery. And apparently there would be a cafe or so that we were supposed to call the hotel and they would come pick us up at these prearranged times. And we had to fit into the three times of this hotel taxi kind of arrangement. We're a little bit confused. We're like, well, we didn't really understand, but we figured, we'll figure it out. So we get to the town. There are only 2 cafes. You could throw a stone to them. So there's no other place for the cab to pick you up. So there was no need for us to be confused because there was no other option. So that we just told the hotel exactly which cafe we're at. And so we get down this little alleyway and all of a sudden it opens up to this very boisterous outdoor cafe. And we're like, hallelujah. And we had this wonderful pilgrim's meal, which was nice, a nice cold beer. And it was like a great ending of the day. And then the cab picks us up, no problem, takes us back to the hotel, which was lovely. They had nice gardens and grounds that you could walk around. And it was just a really nice setting. And that's one thing I did discover on the things that seemed like they were a little bit confusing for me communication-wise. It really wasn't. It's just we didn't know that it was going to be simple once we got there. That was a mystery solved. Now, the next morning was John's birthday, a big birthday. So I had bought this big gold crown and some balloons that he could wear to highlight his special day on that day's walk. And I think he begrudgingly put them on to appease me because he's a nice guy. But then he found this to be quite the conversation starter along the trail. He told me that some gal from the Netherlands wanted to take his photo. And when he ran into her a few days later, she's like, hey, you're a celebrity in the Netherlands. Everybody saw it on social. So he got a kick out of that. And now that we are on the final 100 kilometers of the Camino, it's gotten a lot more crowded. Before, you'd run into some people that were doing the Camino, but most people just want to get the Compostela so that people tend to just do that last 60 miles or 100 kilometers. So we're now starting to see a lot of the same faces every day because we're on pretty much in the same day, the same schedule as the people that you're seeing. And we all tend to stop in the same town, same distance every day for the most part. So you're playing leapfrog with a lot of new people that you meet, You might see them today, may not see them for a couple more days. You might see them for lunch today, and you might run into them for dinner tomorrow. And you're starting to build this camaraderie with strangers because everybody's walking in the same direction. We're all going to the same place, that cathedral in Santiago. But you definitely feel a very festive spirit building as we're getting closer and closer. Because doing the Camino is hard. And you've got every right to feel proud of yourself for doing this when you arrive in Santiago. He said, in our itinerary, we're walking like 14 miles a day, which is a lot, they're not, up and down mountains, but still 14 miles is 14 miles of your feet pounding on the ground. So you're going to feel it. And if you wanted, let's say you wanted to be like Christine when she did the Cotswold way, she did it smarter than me. I did the traditional number of miles each day, but she did it in a longer period of time with shorter daily miles so that she had the energy to go explore in the afternoon, whereas my feet were dead. I just wanted to get cleaned up, get a dinner, and go to bed. So you can just work with Follow the Camino and say, hey, I don't want to do 14-mile days. What can you do for me? And it'll just be a longer trip. So instead of 2 weeks for this thing, you might do it in 3 or even 4, but work with them. They can help you with that. And if you have the time, every week, it's probably a good idea to have 1 day of rest. So take a rest day. And again, Follow the Camino can help you pick what would be a good day. So it might be on day 6 this week, and it might be on day 8 on that particular trail. So they can give you an idea of which would be the better one to take the break. They'll help you pick a fun town based on your pace and on your interests. Another thing I want to mention about doing a Camino, we're all going to the same place. So it gives you something instantly to talk about with the people that you're meeting along the way. And they're pilgrims because you see their pack and you see their shell. So it's easy to strike up a conversation with a complete stranger. And there's a instant bonding and friendliness about that. So it's a really fun way to meet people from all over the world. And like I said, I still keep up with people I met on my Camino, and you will too. I mentioned that you can bike or horseback ride. We never saw anybody horseback riding, but we did in this one town. It's funny, we saw this biker, but he didn't really do a lot of homework, I don't think. He didn't have a good map, and I think he was using the walking route because he was taking his bike on paths that were not bike friendly, and it was taking him forever. Versus sometimes when you come to these awkward areas like the Emerald Forest, you couldn't take a bike on that. So there would have been a detour for the bikers, and he didn't seem to know that. So I'm sure he eventually made it, but it was funny. We were chatting with him. We stopped to help him figure out where he was, and he asked us why we came so far just to walk. And I can't remember if it was Charlie or Dave said to him, why'd you come so far just to bicycle? And so we all had to laugh over that. And he wasn't the only one who didn't plan. We saw a lady pushing a pram. She's got her baby and her stuff, and there's just most of the time you could do that. But there's places like that Emerald Forest ain't going to happen. And that Emerald Forest, that miles along that babbling creek and all these moss-covered rocks, and they had some, I think it was like millstone houses. They must have been grinding the grain there because we saw all these remnants of old stone structures. It was just a beautiful day and so completely different than everything else we'd seen. It was a magical little day that a lot of us kind of did our own thing because you just felt like you were in a little slice of emerald heaven. It's just beautiful. One thing I love about trips like these are the surprises. After we encountered the lost biker, we were walking through the countryside and we eventually come to this little town and an old monastery that had been converted into a hotel. Across from it, though, was the gardens and the most delightful cafe I probably have ever been to. It had charming little, I don't know what you would call them, just some little wrought iron tables and chairs, and there's brooks. There's even a waterfall on the way back that John had found. The best food, really fancily decorated with edible flowers and just beautiful food, beautiful drinks, this little oasis in the middle of nowhere, this nice little shady dappled garden that was just heaven. And so everybody in the group probably stopped there because you couldn't help it. It's just too delightful not to go in, at least get a soda or something. Unfortunately, our inn for that night, which was my favorite of the whole time, was maybe a mile or so away. And so we finally worked our way there, and it was an old family mansion that had been in the family for centuries, mind you, centuries. And the current generation that was running it had divided the mansion into make this beautiful little lodge. And I think the walls had to be, 18 inches thick. And it was all plump, comfy, really, really high-end bedding and linens and just delightful and charming. We had to get into the building with one of those old skeleton key things and one of the things that looked like the old-fashioned keys and just this magical place. But they didn't have a restaurant. So that night, there was a couple of restaurants half a mile away that we walked to. And of course, John picked the winner again. I should have got that, but it was a special fish dish for two. It was just me, and I couldn't eat that much fish. So mine was good, but not as good as John's was. Again, they did offer breakfast in the morning. So we were able to do a breakfast. They just couldn't do like a full-on dinner. Oh, and I want to talk about the lodging. Another thing on that survey I did with everyone, the lodging that Follow the Camino arranged for us really exceeded our expectations. They always tried to find cute little family-run inns that had some special charm to them. So there was no cookie-cutter hotels unless you're in a city, and that was pretty much all your options. But even those, the staff was so nice. Like the lady on the blackout, she couldn't have been any sweeter. And our last one in Santiago, that lady just bent over backwards for me when I did a screw-up, which I'll tell you about that later. But they're just nice. So they do a really good job of selecting your places to stay. And 5-star, if you can give more stars, I would give more stars than that. So kudos to you, Follow the Camino. You did a great job on our lodging for sure. Follow the Camino seemed to really take a special pride in showing off the fun and little quirky inns that they knew about, and that would leave us with a great impression and memory. And I want to talk to you a little bit about luggage storage too. So there are places in the cities, generally speaking, that you can store your luggage. So when I did my Camino, the original way, from Oviedo, Spain, down to Santiago, I was doing a long trip and I didn't want to carry all that luggage the whole way. I just wanted to carry just a small little, what I needed for the Camino, not the stuff I needed for my other activities. So I went to the post office, and you go to the local post office when you're at one of the Camino towns and ask for the pilgrims rate. And so they will wrap in like the plastic wrap, secure your bag. They will send it ahead to you to Santiago, and you pay a very reasonable fee for it to be waiting for you when you make it to Santiago. And that's a great way. So you can use the pilgrims rate luggage to move your main gear. So all you have is just your Camino gear with you, because they do have a weight limit on how much you can transport each day. There's no problem. I think one of the people in our group overpacked a little bit, wouldn't you say? But everybody else was able to stay within, I think, the 20 kilograms, I believe it is, that you can transport each day. For me personally, I find 2 weeks is about as long as I feel like walking long distance. In fact, that's all I've done. All my handful of walks that I've done so far and Caminos I've done so far, maybe half a dozen or so, that around 2 weeks, and same with backpacking, I'm about done with doing that. And so I was afraid to book ahead of time to do all the way to the sea, an extra 5 days. So it was almost like another week, because I didn't know how my body was going to feel. So I was like, oh, it's probably not as crowded as the regular Caminos. I'm just going to wing it like the traditional way. That was the plan. So I decided to wing it and not book my lodging ahead of time, which I will tell you a little bit more about later at the end of this program. But that ended up being a mistake. And I just don't think you can wing Caminos anymore these days unless you do so in the off season or very early spring, very late fall, when there's not as many people, because in the smaller towns, everything's full. And I remember on my Oviedo way one, there's one day I was really tired and I get to the town and there was no bed in town at all. And I had to walk, I think it was another 6 miles to get to the next town, which I did not feel like doing. So I'll talk more about my Finisterre to the ends of the earth as we wrap up my group part. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get further into the program. As we're getting close, we're starting to see mussel farms, which is kind of cool. So we saw some mud flats, and some locals would have, I guess, a license to collect the mussels. And these were passed down for generations, as this was a very lucrative way for them to make a living. And out in the bays and all that, sometimes you'd see mussel farms. So that was kind of cool. On this one day, they were forecasting thunderstorms. And I don't mind walking in the rain, but I don't like walking or hiking or biking in a thunderstorm. That scares me. I know of too many people that either got hit by lightning or know somebody that got hit by lightning, and I don't want to be one of those statistics. So that day was my solo day that I hustled. I mean, I walked fast, and because I was trying to get to the hotel before the fireworks of the thunderstorm started. And as I near the town, the rain just starts pouring down. Again, I don't mind the rain, but I was drenched. But because of the hard rain, I had missed one of my turns. Because like I said, the only time I tend to get off course a little bit is in town, because there's so many places that you can look, on a corner, on a lamppost, on a telephone pole, on the sidewalk, on the side of a wall. So there's lots of different places they'll mark the trail. So if you're going to get off track, it's going to probably be in a town. And that's what happened to me in this rain when I had to go under some underpass. And I guess I should have hooked a left, and I saw the town, so I hooked a right thinking that's where I needed to go, and it wasn't. And I got up and I didn't see any arrows, so I knew I'd made a wrong turn. I figured out where I probably made the wrong turn. But I had seen all day people had these little sprigs of yellow Scotch broom, I think it was Scotch broom, yellow flowers that they were decorating their cars, they were decorating their doorways and all that with these yellow blooms. And so I stopped to ask a woman where the Camino was, and she had a bunch of the yellow flowers in her bag. And so she said, "Oh, it's on the way to my house. I'll walk with you." So the two of us walked, 10 minutes together. And I asked her, "What are these yellow flowers for?" And it was basically like a May Day celebration to celebrate that winter's over, spring is here. So it's one of the first flowers that bloomed in the area. So everybody would decorate with that. So next time I saw some wild ones on the side of the road, I snapped some off and attached that to my pack so I could celebrate May Day as well. But it was just a lovely, again, one of those fun local exchanges that you get with slow travel that you don't when you're on a big bus tour where you're just with the guide and you don't get to interact with the locals. So in the rain, but yet still before the lightning, or just about before the lightning, I arrived to the downtown area, and now I got to figure out where's the hotel. And I don't want my phone to get wet. So I see a big gazebo where they must have bands or something like that play. So I duck under there so I could look at my phone without wrecking it. And then I see, it's only a couple blocks away to the hotel. It's like, score. So at least I knew where it was. I kind of memorized what turns I had to make to get to the hotel. And just a couple minutes later, I was there at this nice, welcome hot shower, nice dry clothes. My bag was waiting for me. So that worked out just great. But this was a little port city. And so the next day, we were going to be on a long and beautiful boat ride. So remember I told you we took the spiritual variant. So while some people might continue the walking, we did like they moved the remains of St. James by boat up this beautiful river. It's the Arousa estuary, I think they call it, on the Uya River. So we were going the same way that the remains of St. James went. And they brought the relics to Santiago because St. James had preached in Padron and in this area in 35 to 40 AD. So we had a pre-dawn departure. So just getting early light in the photo. If you go to the website, beautiful sunrise photos for our departure. So that was spectacular. And along the river, they have 12 crosses. I was thinking maybe it's like Stations of the Cross, but it's all Jesus on the crucifix for the most part that you see dotted as you go up this. It's like an hour and a half boat ride, I believe. Very, very pretty. And so we were getting to this one really pretty area, and there's fog, and it was very mystical and serene and spiritual, and the music was such. And I thought, they've timed it with what we're seeing spiritually. I was like, how cool is that? And then all of a sudden they switched the music to something really upbeat and jazzy. I was like, well, I guess I read that wrong. But people got up and they were dancing, and they passed around some little nice little cakes. It was just a fun day. Everybody really enjoyed that boat ride a lot, except for Jody, who gets a little seasick. But she hung in there pretty good. She's a trooper. But that was I think people really enjoyed that very much. And then when we docked about 90 minutes later, this was almost like a rest day because we only had a couple of miles to walk to our hotel, and that was it. That was our day. We didn't have to walk any further. And our hotel, like I told you before, we always got some really interesting places. This was a converted monastery, and it was lovely, and it had all these nooks and crannies and interesting places to see inside this beautiful old building. But it's not even lunchtime. So now, yes, you could just rest, but the next day, which is our day into Santiago, was going to be a long day. I think it was like 20 miles or something like that. And like, hey, we got all this time. We're feeling good, and tomorrow's supposed to rain. So some of us decided I guess technically it's still legal because we did the same miles. We did all the miles. We just did it backwards. We took a ride up maybe 10 miles by cab and then walked back to the monastery. So the next day we'd take a cab back to where we got dropped off the day before so that we would walk into Santiago, get there when we're fresh, which I think is nice. And so we thought that was a great plan. Not everybody did it. Some did not. But a handful of us did it, and that was kind of funny. And of course, like I said, all the pilgrims, everybody's walking in the same direction to Santiago, and we got our day packs with the shells, and we got stopped several times. Hey, you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. And we're like, yeah, we know. Don't worry about it. We're fine, But we thought that was kind of funny. So the next day, the day we're now walking into Santiago, purist Diane, I think Diane walked the whole way from Porto too, if I'm not mistaken. So she did every single mile. And then Christine and Jeanette all got their rain gear on because it was a rainy morning. So they left early morning after breakfast in their ponchos to do that final, I thought it was 20 miles, but I have here in my notes, it was 16 miles as scheduled. And the rest of us did the little halfback trick. So we ended up arriving midday, whereas they ended up coming in late afternoon. So arriving at the cathedral or finishing up any long distance walks, to me, it's always a little bit surreal and often a little bit anticlimactic. Because I do find that it is the journey is the thing that I enjoy about doing these rather than the destination. Yes, I'm very proud of myself that I did it. High five. Yeah, we celebrate. But it's not as big to me as the steps and the things that we did to get to that point. I don't know if the others would say the same, but that's how I feel. It's not as, like I said, I think anticlimactic is probably the right word for it because I've been proud of myself the whole way, if that makes any sense. But, I'm thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled that I did it. I'm very happy, but I'm as happy the other days too. I guess that's a good way of putting it. So you get to the plaza in Santiago. Now, this is one of Europe's finest cathedrals. This thing is beautiful, and I encourage you to go to the website to take a look at the photos. And you can't even get the whole thing in one frame because it's so big. And in front of it, it's got this huge plaza all the way around with the rectories and all those kinds of things. So it's a major, major production, this whole cathedral arena. And I don't think this is the first cathedral that's been there. I think the first one might have burned down or something. The Moors tore it down or something. But anyway, now it is, it's still hundreds of years old. This cathedral was built over the relics of the Apostle St. James, as I told you. And a cathedral in honor of St. James has been there since AD 829. So since that time, pilgrims have been walking, biking, and horseback riding to pay homage, request a special indulgence, ask for forgiveness or healing since the Middle Ages, basically. There's a fascinating history of this cathedral that I'll link to in the show notes. The present church itself was built beginning 1075, and it's just a massive granite art masterpiece. Like I said, definitely check out the website. Definitely do a Camino. You'll see it yourself in person. That's the better way. And as I mentioned, I would probably guess 85 to 90% of the people do a Camino for non-spiritual reasons or non-religious reasons. They might, because there's a definite spiritual intent with a lot of people because it's a very moving experience to do so. Like I said, often for major life change reasons. And the one beauty of a Camino is it gives you the time to actually simply think, because you're not getting interrupted by, if you keep your phone in airplane mode, by texts and calls and all the interruptions of daily life, particularly these days when it seems like every 2 seconds it's hard to keep your attention span. So it gives you a chance to slow down and actually think, which is lovely. And one of the reasons I like long distance walks so much. And when people finally make it to the plaza or their endpoint of any long distance walk like the Santiago de Compostela, they're hugging, they're high-fiving, sometimes they cry. We did a little bit of all the above, and shortly after we got there, some man arrived, and he bellowed, loud. And we're talking, there's hundreds of people there. And like the whole plaza cheered him. He was just so elated, because for a lot of people, this is a really, really hard thing. I think for our group, because we were fit and trained and all that kind of thing, we were elated, but we knew we could do it. I have a feeling the guy that was bellowing, he wasn't quite sure, and he pushed himself beyond what he thought he could do, and he did it. Just like I saw a gal on my Camino, the last one I did at Finisterre, she just was uncontrollable sobbing at the end. That she had probably, I'm guessing, did the French way. I couldn't get her to talk. She was just so overwhelmed with the fact that she had finally accomplished this. Because it's a big commitment, particularly if you do the French way, because that's 500 miles. So once we finally settled down, had our celebration in the plaza, now it's time to go get our Compostela, our certificate that we completed the Santiago de Compostela. So we go around, there's a nearby office, and they've gotten much more techie since I was there a couple years ago. Now, particularly since we're a group, it was super easy. So we inputted our info on a little computer. A lady checked our work to make sure that we did it all right, and then you wait until you're called, and they process us all as a group. They give us our Compostela, which is a nice, colorful certificate with medieval drawings on it. And this time, much to the dismay of Jody and perhaps a few others, they Latinized our name. So it wasn't the name how we spell it. It was Katrina or something like that. And Jody, I forget what they did to Jody's name. But on my last Compostela, they spelled it the way I spell it. So I don't know. Maybe we just had a different person that time, and that's what they do, or that's just what that person did, or that's the new thing. I'm not quite sure. A week later, after I finished my walk to the sea, I was back in the plaza, and a group of like 6 bikers arrived. And so I went over and offered to take their photo so somebody was not out of their photo. And they were delighted. And I was chatting with them. They had biked 2,000 kilometers all the way from Holland. I was like, oh, my Lord. That was something to be celebrating. That was amazing. So as the end of our group finale, we had a grand finale celebratory dinner. And I'd found this really nice restaurant that served amazing farm-to-table food. It was cozy and just beautiful decor, great reputation for the cuisine and the staff and all that. But the restaurant didn't open until 9 o'clock. Now, I knew we were tired, and particularly the group that did the whole 16 miles. Staying up to 9 o'clock was probably going to be hard. So while they were still open for lunch, I stopped in there and I said, listen, I'm on that table that you got with all those people this evening. Do you think we could eat earlier than 9 o'clock? And to my delight and theirs, because we were such a large table, it was going to be hard to serve the rest of their guests that night. We got to move ours to 7:30, and we ended up having this great dinner, had the whole restaurant, the whole staff to ourselves, and it was a fantastic way to finish off our trip. Amazing. So you remember I mentioned that I did a survey of everybody in our group afterwards to see what they liked and didn't like and all that about the trip. And so I'm going to give you a couple, so it's not just my opinions of this adventure. I want to tell you a little bit about what they had, anonymous feedback they gave me. So when I asked the question of their favorite memory, most of the people said it was the people that they met and the friendships that they made. Several mentioned the blackout party and the boat ride, that long boat ride, as well as the outstanding scenery. Of course, walking into the plaza in Santiago is a thrill as well. On the question of what surprised them the most, the beauty of the path, as well as the wonderful variety and freshness of the food, topped the list, as did the much nicer than expected accommodations that Follow the Camino arranged for us. And remember, don't forget to email me for the current promo code. On what they wish they'd known ahead of time, a few said they wish they'd practiced of Spanish and Portuguese to make it a little bit easier to converse with the locals. When you're in a city, it's not hard to find English. Sometimes in the smaller villages, you're going to be doing a lot more pantomime unless you speak at least some basic rudimentary words. And of course, always learn please, thank you, and all that in whatever country you're going to. I'll put a link to the foreign language tips for travel in the show notes. One thing that I was surprised, or maybe I just have forgotten, is, I call it caveman Spanish, but I can communicate. I can have a butchered conversation. But, I always thought Portuguese was fairly similar because they're Romance languages. No, they're not. So I struggled a lot more with the Portuguese because they have some certain letters that I don't recognize and I don't know how to pronounce it. And so I did a lot better once we got to Spain. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the transition from Portugal to Spain. How did I miss that? So the border between the two countries on the Camino is a river. And so to get across the river, you have to take a water taxi. And we met Andrea, who runs the Popeye boat taxi service. It's probably like a 5 or 10 minute ride across the river. Just a delightful lady. Everybody loved meeting Andrea. And she's very smart. She's one of the first ones you'll see. So when you do your Camino, when you cross over and need that water taxi, make sure you go to Popeye the Sailor Man's taxi. She's a hoot, and she even had these little charms that we could also attach to our shelves. And it was another fun local encounter. was meeting Andrea and the Popeye taxi guy. So let me get back to my little survey. So going back to the languages, try to learn at least some of the polite phrases for this route, of course, Portuguese and Spanish. And the tips, I think, in that episode on language learning for travel is pretty helpful. But I find that even if I'm in a country where I don't know anything, between pantomime, smiles, and context, I can usually get by. And of course, you have Google Translate and in a jam. Follow the Camino does give you your itinerary with the address and a hotel map, so you can't really get too far askew. One anonymous responder, I don't know who this is. I know who you are. Wish she hadn't packed so heavy. I have to laugh because it was a lot. Just wear the same stuff over and over again and wash it out in the sink. It's fine. It'll make your life so much easier. You'll never regret packing light. And if it's something you really, really need, they will sell it wherever it is you're going. When I asked folks, had they prepared enough, it was about half and half said yes. The other half said they wish they'd trained more. So if you're somebody that needs a push or guidance on training more than my website or podcast, you can use my affiliate, Trailblazer Wellness. I'll put a link in the show notes and just tell Becky that I sent you and you'll get 10% off. And speaking of training, all right, so right now I'm getting ready next week. I head to Nepal to do my Everest Base Camp trek. Having an adventure like this in front of you, you would not believe how fit I am right now. I don't think I've been this fit. Decades. I'm at my fighting weight. I'm within a couple pounds of my best weight ever, but it's with muscle. I'm toned. I'm fit. I can charge up mountains because I'm a little bit terrified and intimidated about what I've signed up to do, and I want to make sure I can do it and not be at the end of the pack. I don't mind being in the middle. I don't need to be at the front, but I don't want to be last. And so that little bit of fear and intimidation is a marvelous motivator for me. And so I don't know. It's probably not sustainable because I've been working so hard, but it sure is nice looking in the mirror. And I can't remember how many times me or most people look in the mirror and say, hey, I think you're actually looking pretty good to yourself. So use an adventure, particularly a +1, something a little bit outside your comfort zone to help motivate you to get in your best shape ever. When I asked folks whether they'd be interested in doing another Camino, 100% said yes or definite yes, and only one maybe, the French way. So I thought that was encouraging and tells you something about how fun this was. Another question was, are they confident now about doing a self-guided long-distance walk instead of like we did our solo together where you had, people that you could be with or count on kind of a thing? And as long as it was a well-marked trail and not in the backcountry, everybody said they'd now be comfortable doing so. All the Caminos and long-distance walks that I've covered on the Active Travel Adventures podcast are well-marked. And plus, you have apps and maps. And if you use one of my Follow the Camino or One Foot Abroad affiliate, you have a 24/7 hotline that you can ask them questions or get some help, or if something goes wrong and you need a taxi, they can help you figure out any problems. So you have the confidence or the reinforcements behind the scenes that can help you do this, whether it's solo or with your significant other or a friend or something. It's something you can do, truly. And don't forget, if you use Follow the Camino or One Foot Abroad, email me for the promo code. One of the commenters said that they'd feel comfortable doing a self-guided walk, but they love the camaraderie of our group and the fact that they didn't have to pay as close of attention. And I get that, because you are just walking and just kind of walking with the group, and it's somebody out of the few sets of eyes are going to be able to see, oh, we're supposed to turn here, oh, do this kind of a thing. I would say, yes, walking with people is definitely fun, but even if you go solo, you're going to meet people along the way, so you'll make friends, whether they're 2-hour friends, 2-day friends, or lifelong friends. You will be not necessarily walking by yourself unless you choose to. And something about long-distance walks, I think it's because you're walking side to side instead of looking eyeball to eyeball, people tend to have deeper conversations in my experience. You get the superficial stuff out of the way, and where are you from, how long, when do you start, those kinds of things are the first couple of minutes. But then it doesn't take long before you're talking about some deeper subjects that might take you weeks or months back home with a new acquaintance. So I find that very interesting. Everyone in the group said they loved the concept of the solo together, that was a hit. So I'll try to do something like that again in the future, because I thought it was fun too. They liked that they could mingle or go solo or pair up as they wish, and they could change and leapfrog and do whatever they felt like during the day, depending on how they were feeling. And as long as their bags were downstairs at 8 o'clock, they had the rest of the day to figure out whatever they wanted to do. It was great. And I asked them how to rate this trip compared to other adventures they've been on. The majority gave it a 10. One gave it a B+, but she said getting stitches knocked it down a half a grade, which I thought was funny. And a couple of 9s, but I did get a 10 plus. So I think that makes the average a 10. And regardless, everybody thought it was a winning experience. They also gave Follow the Camino great marks, especially on the hotel selection and the smooth baggage transfers. The app was helpful as well. After our dinner, even though the folks were naturally exhausted, I prodded everyone to come with me to see the cathedral lit up at night. It's a completely different experience. And I started the fun by doing a ridiculous dance, wearing the birthday crown in front of the cathedral, and I eventually got most of them to show me their moves. Everybody but me had some decent moves to show off, especially Christine, but my favorite was watching Jody and John dance together, and he's given me permission to include that video about our experience on the website, so I would love for you to check it out. It's beautiful, and it's very poignant to me because probably more than even the high fives at the end, it shows the celebration and the love that we had at the end of our Camino. I also put together a 4-minute video that summarized our Camino. You'll find that on the YouTube channel, and I have it embedded on the website as well. It took me forever to put together, so I would appreciate you taking a look at it and tell me what you think. After our dance, we said our goodbyes, and everybody went their own way. Because some of us would be heading out in the morning, we may not get a chance to see them. But I'm sure I'll see all of them one way or another in some country or another as the years go by. We'll certainly keep up. So now I am solo, no more solo together. And I'm going to be doing my own thing, making my way to the sea. I'm still not 100% sure. I want to see how I feel in the morning. I knew I'm going to take a rest day anyway. So I woke up, I said, I think I'll go to Muxia. So there's 2 different endpoints at the sea. One is Muxia, which is a little further north than Finisterre, which is the one I planned to walk to if I was going to do it. It's like 50-something miles away, about a 5-day walk. And when I woke up, I was like, my body feels pretty good. I do a day trip by bus to Muxia and back, have a nice lunch, catch the bus back. I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do it. Because I hadn't made any prior arrangements, that meant my luggage wasn't going to be transferred either. So I had to figure out a plan of what to do with my stuff because there's no way I'm carrying my big suitcase with me. That's too much. So I made arrangements with the hotel to store my bag. And again, there's luggage storage places in town that I could have paid for. But they were very kind. Like I said, it's a great hotel. So I put an extra hiking shirt, an extra pair of underwear, extra pair of socks, and the rest of my day pack in. And in the morning, I got up before dawn and off I went. And actually, that was a great time to go because Santiago was asleep. It was still dark when I left. And when I got to just the outskirts, I could see the cathedral lighting up in the background. And it's a great photo. I have that on the website as well. I encourage you to go see that. So I was going to try to wing it. This was the plan. And I would go until I got tired, and then I'd go to the nearest village and find a place to sleep. Great plan. Great plans don't always go as planned, particularly because other people had the same idea. And I learned after a couple of days that my plan was not going to work. And I was getting nervous because I'm tired. I've been walking over 2 weeks now. My feet are tired. I'm a little bit tired. I don't really have the mental or physical energy to get to one village and then have to walk many more miles to the next village if everything's full. So after scurrying the first day, I said, all right, forget it. So I started booking something ahead of time to make sure. And I was glad that I did because I got to this one town. They didn't, but they were able to find something that was relatively close. But I didn't want the anxiety of being stressed out about it. In some of these villages, I couldn't even have taken a cab if I wanted to because there was no cab. And I was pretty rural. It's not as busy as that last bit is of the Santiago, of the Camino going into Santiago for sure. But it was beautiful. I'm glad I did it. I got to Finisterre, which has this really cool sculpture, and then you go to the very end point where there's like a little lighthousey thing, and there was a bagpiper playing, and bagpipes up in that whole Andalusian area of Spain are a tradition there. So it's not uncommon to see a bagpiper. So it wasn't a Scottish bagpiper. It was a local bagpiper. And that was kind of special. And I felt good about it. And there at the end, you see one of the big stone mile markers at 0.00 kilometers. And that meant something. It was a walk. It was a big deal to me. But I decided once I got there, I had my celebratory lunch when I finally arrived. And then I caught the bus back to Santiago. And from there, once you're in Santiago, now I got to get back to Porto because I had a round trip ticket from there. You can pick up a Flixbus, very easy. There's an app that you can use so you can buy your ticket in English and you'll have the code or the confirmation on your phone, which makes it super easy. It's affordable, reliable. I've used them throughout Europe, and so I recommend the Flixbus. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. I'm going to end up with some generic tips about doing a Camino that I think will be helpful to you. Number one, make sure that you get a virtual private network. Almost every hotel, and this is not just in Europe, I find it in America, in the US all the time, and it drives me batty. You go to a hotel and the password is password 123. I did get my website hacked once because a hacker had gotten into the Airbnb or had stayed in the Airbnb, knew what the password was. It was a stupid password anyway, and wasn't changed at all. And so they were able to access me because they had the techie skills to know how to do that. And so a virtual private network will allow you to encrypt all your messages going in and out so you can safely check your bank, you can safely check your emails, and people are not going to be able to see what you're doing or what you're up to. There's also like a sleeve that you can put over your credit cards so that they can't lift that either. I think it's RFD. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Let me make a note of that. On all of our adventure, I never felt unsafe. That being said, I always did keep my passport in a zip bag to keep it dry on my body. I had a zipper pant leg pocket that I would normally keep it in or buried deep, deep, deep within my day pack. So it'd be hard for somebody to pick. I never felt unsafe, but you still make normal precautions, particularly when you're around a touristy area. One thing I always do whenever I travel is take a screenshot of my directions in case I don't have cell service for wherever I'm going. I need to get an eSIM. I bought an eSIM to use on this trip, except for I didn't realize my phone was not unlocked, even though I paid cash for it. So I have that resolved now. So hopefully on my Asia trip next week, I will be able to use the phone without issue. But if you don't do that, because most of the time actually I've traveled without one, so I don't always have internet when I travel. Although hopefully now that I'm going to be using eSIM, that's going to go away. But it still helps to have a screenshot of the directions so you know where you're going just in case you don't have cell service for whatever reason. And a lot of times maybe in the villages you might still not have good internet. So make sure your phone is unlocked, and you can find that by checking with your carrier, your cell service provider. They're the ones I think that lock it or unlock it. And make sure that you pack light. I have a suggested packing list on the website. Most people bring way too much stuff, and I've been traveling long enough, particularly when I travel long term. You get sick of seeing me wear the same stuff, but I have really easy to clean, quick dry stuff that if I wash it at night, it's dry by morning, and it just makes your life so much easier if you're not lugging around a bunch of heavy stuff. For some reason, in Portugal and Spain, even though we saw tons of vegetable gardens, you hardly got any vegetables on your plate at dinner, and I never really understood that. So on a longer trip, make sure you bring some vitamins. I think you might need them. So John, in quotes, our leader, did a blog post that he very generously allowed me to share with you. I'll have that in the website as well. And I'd like to read his conclusions of his blog. I thought he did an excellent job, and I think it'll be a nice way to finish up today's show. So these are John's words on his blog. Everyone walks the Camino for their own reasons. Traditionally, the Camino was a pilgrimage made for religious reasons. Today, people walk it for many reasons: spiritual, athletic, as a slow form of tourism, etc. For me, the Camino was the launching point for a new chapter in my life. I retired 3 weeks before I started the Camino, and after spending 40 years working at the post office, the Camino offered an opportunity to reflect, to look forward, and to figure out what I wanted to do with my retirement. So for my Camino, I wanted to talk to my fellow pilgrims, to listen to their stories, ask questions, and to learn something along the way. These are the lessons I learned from my fellow pilgrims. Kit, that's me, brings people together. Her passion for adventure travel led to the creation of the Active Travel Adventures podcast, which led to a group of 16 strangers walking the Camino together. None of us had to walk together, but we quickly became friends and found ourselves sticking together. Lesson number 1, share what you're passionate about with others. Although Kit repeatedly denied that she was our leader, insisting that she merely brought us together, she's more of a leader than she thinks. Aw, John, thanks. That's me. And because I often found myself navigating for our group with mixed results, she often called me fearless leader, something I never considered myself to be. Lesson 2, even if we don't think of ourselves as leaders, often others do see you as a leader. Be a leader. Clint, a part-time radio DJ, posted on Facebook, thoughts from the Camino, little insights that he learned along the way, such as, the best way to see a country is to walk through it. Lesson 3, observe the world, look for life lessons. Dave, an agriculture professor at Ohio State, was an amazing person to walk the Camino with. He is a natural-born teacher. He shared his knowledge along the way and has a knack for explaining complicated things in a clear, concise manner that was both easy to follow and interesting. He was always asking questions along the way or climbing to the top of a mountain to see what he could see. He reminded me that we can always learn more about the world. Lesson 4, not all of us are great teachers, but we can all be great learners. Charlie from Philadelphia was an interesting man who sometimes walked with the group, sometimes went his own way, but was always willing to help others. Lesson 5, march to your own beat, follow your own path, but help others along the way. Tim was recently retired, recently widowed, and this is his first trip to Europe. Tim is a mellow, true gentleman who seems to be a Zen master enjoying life. The dude abides. Lesson 6, enjoy the ride and appreciate life. Craig, who walked the Camino with his wife Lori, is someone who will strike up a conversation with anyone. Lesson 7, make friends wherever you go. Lori, who walked with her husband Craig, is retiring soon and plans to implement a system to avoid getting in a rut once retired. Lesson 8, each week, plan your schedule to do the things that bring you joy. Diane, a retired mathematics professor at Boston U, took a bad fall during the Camino, hit her head, slapped a bandage on her head, and refused medical attention until after she finished walking for the day. Lesson 9, when life knocks you down, get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Christine, a small business owner from Massachusetts, was dealing with an injury and hadn't trained as much as she would have liked. The Camino was very challenging, but she kept at it. Lesson 10, don't give up when things get challenging. Jeanette, a Swiss-born holistic vet living in Australia, walked the Camino at her own pace and in her own way. She seemed like a very Zen-centered person who enjoyed observing everything around her. Lesson 16, sometimes it's best to just shut up, listen, and observe. Lori, a former journalist, a Boston by foot tour guide, is a woman passionate about her many interests. Her passion and enthusiasm was infectious, and I'm grateful she introduced me to the Atlas Obscura app. Lesson 11, be passionate about things in life. Kelly, who walked the Camino French Way in 2008, dispensed some great advice while we were sitting outside a bar having a beer in Santiago de Compostela. Lesson 12, don't make it all about yourself. Listen to others and be of service to others. Mark, a former professor of agronomy at Ohio State, was another interesting, knowledgeable man to walk with. Unfortunately, some health issues developed during the Camino and he had to fly home early, which must have been disappointing, but he never complained. Lesson 13, things will not always work out as planned. Accept it and move on. Chip, if I remember correctly, worked in admissions at Ohio State and joined our group at the last minute. Chip was always a joy to be around, always engaged with those around him, very witty and loved a challenge, like walking the entire 23 miles out of Porto the first day just to keep Charlie from walking alone. When Mark got sick, Chip volunteered to fly home with him. Lesson 14, be a good friend. Jody, my beautiful wife, was a trooper on this amazing adventure. She loves to walk, so that aspect of the Camino wasn't ever an issue. But it's asking a lot for her to get on planes and boats when you suffer from motion sickness. I admire how she was always willing to do what had to be done. Lesson 15, don't let your fears and phobias stop you from doing the things you love. One thing I love is all the guys who came with us on this Portuguese Way Camino solo together. You guys are terrific, and I had a fantastic time. I'm so glad to hear that you did as well. I hope you've enjoyed my recap of our Portuguese Way Camino. I loved reliving my experience, and if you are interested in doing a Camino, I encourage you to check out the website. I've covered the Camino umpteen times, lots of different paths, and there's always a travel planner too to go with all of them that will help you plan your Camino. If I can ever be of any help on this or any other adventures that I've covered or any questions about travel, you can always hit me up at kit@activetraveladventures.com. I love hearing from you. I like it to be a two-way conversation. And if you'd like to get the monthly newsletter, just click on the newsletter link at the website or email me and I'll put you on the list. I only email you once a month, usually the first Thursday of the month, and it includes recaps of the previous month, travel, any new travel planners, and I have a section on helpful travel tips that I think you'll find useful. And I don't spam you or sell your name. And you can always unsubscribe at any time if you find that one email too much. Hopefully you won't. So thanks for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.